Hello, everybody. I know you guys are the early birds, and we want to reward you for that as people are starting to filter in. I wonder how many of you have seen a music video dealing with safety reporting. Well, if you haven't, you are in for a treat. So check this out just for the next 5 minutes till everybody filters in. And you know what? I probably hold on a second. Forgot to do those sites. There we go. Let's rock it.
Who's in the door? Who's in the door? Clocking at the gate. Another early light. I see the little things that no one writes. A leak, a worn out part, a checklist running thin. The story of the work is in the dark I'm standing in. And no one's gonna know unless I say it out loud. The truth lives on the floor, not up there in the cloud. So I pick up the pen, I open up the screen. We're the eyes, we're the ears, we're the voice they need to hear. File it, name it, bring it to the light. Every report is a hazard, losing height. No blame, no fear, just the truth. We steer, that's how we keep the whole sky clear. We're the eyes and ears. You don't need a crash to know the warning signs. A near miss is a gift between the lines. Closest to the danger, closest to the fix. The unseen gets safer when we speak like this. 'Cause leadership can't see. Well, we don't send up the chain. A quiet flow means trouble that nobody can explain. So I trust the just culture. They got my back tonight. We're the eyes, we're the ears, we're the voice they need to hear. File it, name it, bring it to the light. Every report is a hazard, losing height. No blame, no fear, just the truth. We steer, that's how we keep the
right, that is Golden Globe material right there. Uh-oh. Can you guys still hear that? One second. I had somebody trying to sell me Amazon space here while I was trying to talk to you guys. So, hey, what did you guys think of that video? Go ahead and put that in the chat if you can. Just let me know. But there are, we have created probably about 5 or 6 of those videos that you're more than welcome to use at one of your safety meetings, at a gag gift, whatever. They're all on certain topics of safety management. So, performance indicators. We also have one on objectives and safety communication. So go over to our we have a YouTube channel, right, Kalisa? We have a YouTube channel
Yep.
under Business Aviation Safety Consortium, and just check out some of the videos that we have there. And this is where you'll also see the video of today's continuing education safety roundtable. Now, before we get started, I am going to selfishly take the safety roundtable time just for this talk before we get to Adam and obviously Kalisa with me here as well. And just go over some of the things that we've been doing for the last 6 months at BASC. We've been kind of heads down trying to create tools and information that hopefully helps you on your journey to organizational excellence. And so we've been doing a bunch of little pilot projects, and Cleese has been working very hard at getting all that done and getting everything out there. And we're going to be releasing, probably in small chunks, in the spirit of management change. We're going to be releasing in small chunks some of these things that we've been working on. But one of the big things we really want to get out there is if you have not signed up to get your own member portal, please do. You can either send me or Khalees an email with the names and email addresses of the people that you would like to be a part of the portal. We'd love to get a logo on there for you as well. Or if you go to basafetyconsortium.org under portal sign in, there is another little tab that says request a portal. So if you haven't done that yet, I know there's maybe about 40 of you yet that haven't done it. Please do, because once you go on there, once you're in the portal, you'll be able to see all the upcoming events, all of the we're going to have a chat section too for a little bit of collaboration, and then we're going to post those videos that you saw there as well. So check it out, and then I think that's a big one. We're working on a slow pilot. We have a real couple troopers that are beta testing or actually alpha testing our audit platform, the BASC audit platform. So we're looking to try to find something that we can bring more in-house and something that's integrated with your member portal. So lots going on, lots going on. But like I said, we're not gonna inundate with you all at once with this stuff, but a lot of good stuff. And so that brings me to Adam. Adam, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. Adam and I kind of go way back. We both worked at Universal Weather at the same time, and he was a big part of the international and trip planning that he did there and helped a lot of people out. And he is here to give us a lot of good information on international trip planning. But Adam Hartley, he has over 20 years of business aviation experience, and he's the founder and CEO of the Regulatory Toolbox. His passion is reducing friction for aircraft operators and business aviation stakeholders through a proactive approach to the global regulatory environment. He operates a hub connecting operators to experts and comprehensive solutions to monitor the international regulatory horizon, execute the CBP lifecycle, meet API PNR requirements, decode global tax schemes, simplify emissions mandates, navigate ops certification and authorization, enhance security protocols, and on top of all that, inform safety management. An FAA licensed dispatcher, industry advocate, Adam currently serves on the NBAA Security Council, Environmental Committee, IOC Committee, the CBP Service Provider Working Group, and is former co-chair of the NBAA Schedulers and Dispatchers communities. So, as you all know, like I do, things really change in international ops very quickly too. So, and that can have safety implications. So, I'm going to turn it over to you, Adam, just to let us know your thoughts and how we can operate more safely in this environment.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and your group today. Like you said, you and I go way back to the Universe Weather and Aviation days. And I think all along our focus has always been how can we help operators be better and be safer, be more effective, be more efficient. And, when you brought up the opportunity to come and join this group, I just see so many similarities to kind of our missions, although we work on different core subject matter, I guess you would say. It's in business aviation, it's all linked together. And so there's always cascading effects to the way that you manage your resources, the way that you manage your information, the systems, the processes that you put in place. Nothing, is in a silo. It all kind of ties together. So I thought there was just some great synergy, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come and share with you guys today.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you.
like like you said, my focus is global regulatory, so that's kind of where I'm gonna focus. But I want to tie these things back to, like you said, operational efficiency and safety, and some of the core values of BASC, and see if we can't help people to make the kind of connection here. So let me share. Let's make sure this works in one shot. Everybody see that okay? Fantastic. All right, so prepare for more than the mission. And what do I mean by that? I think coming from the trip support environment and just knowing the business aviation environment, we are always focused, often on the next 72 hours, right? We are focused, whether it's the logistics planner, whether it's the operator themselves, everybody's hyper focused on that next mission. And that can present some real challenges that as the world becomes more complex, and we've seen the regulatory environment just explode over the past 20 years with requirements both local, regional, national, international, all the same, and things that require a different level of support and planning to make sure that you're prepared to go. And so, what I really talk about is how can we build a proactive regulatory foundation as an operator that's focused on what could happen and not the things that we know are going to happen or what's going to happen in the next 72 hours. And really thinking about uh, our trips less as ad hoc instances or events that live on their own, and more as just a continuation of a story we're telling, whether that's interacting with CBP or different regulatory authorities. Our travelers are telling a story as they move throughout the world, and their compliance. Our operators are telling a story as they move around the world, and having that proper foundation is what I focus on to maximize the efficiency for operators. So I thought one of the things you told me when we were talking about the preparation for this, and I was really kind of hyper focused on SMS and safety, and you said Basque is not just about safety. I mean that's a core function of what we do, but it's not just about compliance. It's not just about compliance with safety management system mandates. It's really about organizational excellence, and I love that. The mission that you have, education, collaboration, and evaluation, really lines up with the types of things that I talk to people about with when it comes to specifically the regulatory environment, because it's not just an application to be filled out. It's not one mandate to be met. And we'll talk about a lot of different examples of how getting into something where your compliance is focused on just getting through a trip can really have negative effects that carry on or can be either direct or indirect. So some of the things I talk about, regulatory readiness is a safety input, and it's not just an administrative task. And I just did a video here recently about how do we have something like an administrative task, remembering to renew your border overflight, something that we've all done so many times, or deciding that we're not going to need one of those, and then having it come up as a requirement for a trip presents a couple of different risks. And so if we address this risk, not only as an ad hoc problem, but really address it as organizational capability, foundational way, foundational focus of how we do things, we come out with more success, more like you said, more impact on the overall organization and operation than just that mission. We say we don't get an overflight, okay, we can make another stop. So that regulatory gap creates a direct operational risk. When you have to make an extra stop, that's another takeoff and landing. we know that that's where the majority of aircraft incidents occur, right? So having to make that additional stop is not just something that is annoying or takes a little bit of extra time. It is adding a true direct safety risk to your operation. Not being aware of operational restrictions and having to change at the last minute, not having the access and flexibility to carry the all the potential travelers that you could carry, means last minute changes, and all of these things change the risk profile of the mission. And I would say that also they have beyond that direct risk of having to change the mission, having to change the logistics, having to make extra stops, those types of things. There's also the indirect risk, which where we're talking about the attention of the people that matter, right? The crew who should be maybe they're operating into a new location, maybe they're operating into France for the first time, and 72 hours out from that trip, 48 hours out from the trip, the question comes up, hey, have you taken care of your French noise tax? And the answer is often, what is French noise tax? And now all of a sudden, something that is actually administrative, fairly inane, and not something that is going to directly affect the mission has bubbled up to the top. And so your crew, your pilots, your directors of ops, all these people are now asking questions about, excuse me, about the excuse me, about the potential risk of not having their French noise tax taken care of. Is this going to affect us on the ground? Are we going to be fine? Is the boss going to get a letter later? Is this something we need to scramble and do right now before we go? And you have to spend time getting clarity on that situation, so then you can get your focus back to the flight plan you need to run. What's the weather going to be like? What's the approach? Are there any runway restrictions? What are the airport hours? Is it different in the summer? All these different things. Is our slot confirmed? All these things that really are hard coded into the safety profile take this back seat while you deal with this other issue and gain understanding of it. So it's pulling those functional and really important resources and attention away from those core duties and putting it into a reactive situation. So what I offer here is that the reactive cycle, that we can end that reactive cycle, but it takes a little focus. What it doesn't take is a lot of money, and to deal with some of these programs. This is not an expensive thing, but it is something that needs to find its way into your regular systematic operations. That the global regulatory is not just about what's in your LOA, what's in your operations manual for operating in a general sense, but really needs to get more specific around the requirements in the regions that you might operate to, and the alternates in those areas. If you're going to consider French noise tax, you might want to set up a solution for Belgium embarkation tax. To say that we're going to go to France or we operate to France multiple times a year, but we're never going to go to Belgium is probably leaving yourself short of being completely ready. You may have to go to an alternate. The principal may say, hey, while we're in the region, we actually picked up another meeting, or hey, we want to pick up a colleague or a friend or a family member. All those things need to be thought about ahead of time, so that when the issue occurs, you've got a foundation to build on. You've got a system of how you react. So instead of an emergency scramble, we're talking about kind of a scaled escalation or a systematic process of how do we escalate and then how do we resolve it based on our capabilities. So safety and regulatory compliance, I think, are intrinsically intertwined. It's not just compliance. A fine is not just the ultimate outcome or negative outcome that can occur. Like I said, it can drive delays to your missions, change your mission profile, change the actual logistics and locations that you can operate to. and be a distraction for your crew, and certainly a point of anxiety for your passengers if things are not executed to the way that they want. So what does this look like, right? When we say what are the a found build a foundation, what does that look like? I try to break it down into four different pieces that kind of keep us on the front foot, as well as build organizational knowledge so that you are tracking what's out there in the environment, have a process to review it, understand it, assign resources to it, build a process around it, and then document that so that uh, when so that you don't have information that lives in uh, legacy knowledge of one individual, uh, information that's kept in your email versus in some sort of knowledge system or database. So you have to go back and search and find it. So you're not constantly hitting up the same websites to remember what you think you thought you knew. It's really important to put those things together and have a process built around all of the different locations that you could potentially go to. So, monitor and awareness, that's our global regulatory radar. Where are we getting our information? Where are we finding out if things change? Because that's also a pitfall. There's so many things that are changing all the time. Mandates, even a legacy. I brought up border overflights, even a legacy program like border overflights. If you look at the last 10 years, the amount of change that has undergone in that program is immense, and that's from requirements to process to pre-vetting for operators who are applying, to the validity timeframes. All of those things have changed, and that's not uncommon in the regulatory environment for a program to continue to morph. And hopefully it goes in a positive direction. Border flights have gone in a positive direction and become easier to get, valid for longer, less information to required for amendments and things like that. But it can go the other way, and things can get more complex and harder to deal with. So you want that global regulatory radar where you're watching not only for new things, but for changes. And we want to have this in a mix, and I'll get there here in a second. We want a mix in our global regulatory radar of where we're getting our information and what's important about that information. Then identification and investigation. So okay, I've seen something on the web, I received an email, I received a newsletter. How do you filter that? How do you describe yourself and what your operational needs are? What are the regions that are important to you? So that you can filter through there. There's so much information. We are inundated with information and newsletters coming from different sources, and so it's important to try to be able to focus on what matters to you and sort that into a bucket so that you can then address it. Okay, and some of the key questions are by when, right? Are there timelines associated with this change? We could say one of the recent ones was the name change in Florida. The Palm Beach Airport is getting a new name, which has compliance aspects for your FAA, LOAs, and authorizations. Especially if you're based down there or have operations there, you have a 90-day window with the FAA to update your authorizations with the new names and new documentation. That ICAO change and IATA change, if that is called out specifically in your documentation, then you need to make updates. So and you have a specific 90-day clock to make that happen from a few days ago. And then what if? So what's the effect? If I don't do this, if I don't get it done on time, what's going to happen? Is this something that's going to reduce my access? Is this something that's going to reduce my flexibility? Am I potentially going to be fined? What's the importance? And then implementation of resources. Who in the organization is going to take care of it? Who's going to do the research? Who's going to decide whether technology is involved? Is it EU LISA and you've got to register and then stand up a portal, connect with your service provider with specific documentation? Is it something that needs paperwork or an application that has to be done? So somebody in the organization needs to be responsible. They need to be able to inform the rest of the organization of what the timeline is and really take the lead on it. That doesn't mean that it's that again, that's going to be the only person who knows about EU LISA, or that's going to be, we often say, that's our emissions guy or that's our safety gal, or and we build these silos naturally because it's everything's so complex that to get to the level of knowledge and depth, you have to stay in it and and it's very hard to then also take the time to communicate that stuff clearly uh, in a manner that the rest of your organization can understand. How much do you tell them? I think that's been one of when I talk about my role in business aviation, I used to describe it as, oh, I'm a global regulatory expert. And I don't know that that's really uh, fair. And I don't expect anybody in the operations to be experts per se in these things. You need to know enough to be effective and to hit these big points. How does it apply to me? By when? What do we need to do? But that doesn't mean that you need to be, for like taxes per se, a global tax expert in how noise taxes are calculated. And so I try to see myself more as a generalist, and I think operators, who take on these roles should try to view it in the same way. Hit the big points, and then when you need to escalate and find expert knowledge, then you find the right resources to do that. And then last, so important, document this and back it up. I see it over and over and over in my time in business aviation, where you've had a dispatcher or a senior captain or director of ops who's just a chief pilot often. It's funny who I see as the lead regulatory people in their organization, and it's often directors of ops and chief pilots, and they're way down in the weeds with me on things like EU ETS and taxes. And I often say, why are you the one doing this? Why are you the the emissions person with all the other things you have to do as a chief pilot? And what I hear is they're like, well, I know I'm not leaving tomorrow, right? And so we have this uh, kind of propensity to take it on, put it in our bucket, handle it, versus trying to dole things out to the organization because one, you're worried that you're going to overtask one of your other people. If you've got a pilot who's also got a lot on their plate, and now you say, hey, I also want you to be my emissions person, you're worried that they might leave to find a job where they don't have to be the emissions person, or you just take it on yourself because number one, you're worried about the risk and you want to make sure that it gets done. And number two, that there's some runway ahead of you, and that if it needs to be handed off in the future, that you'll have a time frame to do that. So document this stuff. We really should, as whoever's taking the lead, there should be a knowledge base in the organization. There should be a process of how do we share this, and I don't just mean sending emails back and forth to each other, but a true knowledge base so that as you learn something new, you can log it and share it with your organization, and a place where they can go and find stuff out without having to reach out to the individual who could be on a trip on the other side of the world, could be in training for 2 weeks, could be on vacation with their family in the 1 week they got off in the last 2 months, and you don't want to have to bother them to find out basic information or understand the status of where you're at with a particular program. So break down those silos wherever you can, so that you are managing all these things as organizational tasks and not individual responsibility wherever possible. So let's talk about some of these phases. Let's see what time we're at, 10:25. Talk about some of these phases. Monitor and awareness. I brought up creating a global regulatory radar. And what do I mean by that? Number one, the reach principle. And when I say the reach principle, where can that aircraft reach, right? What's the point in having a global express and not being set up to be on the other side of the world tomorrow in case that request comes in? right? If you've got international LOAs, but you haven't considered the local, national, or regional regulatory requirements of the places that you have the ability to go, then you're leaving yourself in a tough spot. And so when that trip does inevitably come up, and a lot of the, especially on the private side, uh, charter, plans to have operations that come up in a short notice since they have to build these, and they're also more regulated, so they have to build these regulatory foundations with a deeper sense of purpose. But these private operators, you always end up in the place the boss said we're not going to go. Like, oh, we're not planning on Mexico this year. We're never going to go down to South America. We don't go to Europe, until you do, right? And because you don't need landing permits like a charter, there's a thought process that, well, we can just go. But there's global APIS, there's international taxes, there's emissions mandates, there's security programs, there's restrictions that are based, seasonal restrictions, all of these different things that are out there that you want to be ready for. There's noise mandates and portals that you have to register with. Uh, there's being prepared for EASA and SAFA if you're going to go into Europe. So it's not something that just because you have the ability to go there that you want to shoot from the hip and then try to collect those requirements 72 hours prior or 96 hours prior and race to the finish line, right? On the return back to the U.S., say we're not planning to operate international, or uh, I've heard we require our passengers to have U.S. visas, our foreign passengers. Well, lots of foreign, there's over 10 million ESTA holders uh, out in the environment today, and you need to be a visa waiver program holder to service them. And when they show up at the airplane is not the time, or 2 days prior when the boss says, "Hey, we've got a new potential passenger. Can they come with us?" is not the time to start considering that operational capability. But, what are we looking for? So there's so many sources out there. Like I said, you're inundated with information. There's media and news, but what I hear most when I ask people where they get their information, we're all reading it in the news, for lack of uh, a better description. Uh, but you have to trust, or know where you're getting it from. Look at multiple outlets to make sure you're getting the story and the facts, and not an opinion. When it comes to things like regulatory and compliance, I try to not have any opinion on, whether I think a program is good, bad, or indifferent. My goal is always to get an operator to the best place where they understand the requirement and then know how to comply. There is a place for advocacy, like Jason mentioned. I participate on a variety of committees and councils that do get involved in advocacy when we see something needs to change, or a regulation is not properly fit for business aviation, and that is common. That is absolutely very common. That we are a kind of a throw-in to so many requirements, or there's a requirement that's designed for the airlines that then says, "Oh, and non-scheduled aircraft," and that's as much thought as we get put into it. So there is absolutely advocacy and things that need to happen, but when we're learning about a program or there's a new program on the horizon, that's not where advocacy should start, in my opinion. First is education. What is it? Who could it potentially affect? What are the ramifications? And what do we need to do right now? And what's the timeline for what we need to ultimately do to be prepared first? So you want to take a mix of those sources: media, news outlets, your trade associations, your MBAA, EBAA, BBGA, your service providers, of course, all have a wealth of knowledge with the amount. They just have a wealth of knowledge from the amount of different scenarios, different trips that they're supporting, touching all these different places in the world. So those newsletters are good places for awareness. And then regional handlers and government resources is kind of where you drill down. So as you find a story, or you see something you think might apply to you, how do we find out what the true story is? Those boots on the ground, as we've called them so much in the past, or getting physically to the ECFR and reading the regulation for yourself. Often these news stories don't give you a quote of where the reg is, where the notice of proposed rulemaking may be. So it's important to do that level of research. On my side, yes, I'm subscribed to every newsletter and everything out there that we all are as an industry active member with NBAA, and so I see all those stories. But I'm also subscribed to the ECFR with a lot of the different uh, points so that if something changes in that, I'm getting automated messages using AI as a screening tool these days with that additional technology and resource, defining what you're looking for so you're not having to make that dance through 10 different websites in the morning or read 10 different newsletters to try to find that nugget that matters to you. Using AI in the past, it was just like a Google screener looking for keywords and stuff like that. Uh, but now it's much more advanced, and you can describe kind of what you're looking for, the areas that are important to you, describe yourself as an operator, and build a tool to help you either screen through your own email or actually go out and look at websites and see if anything's changed, if there's new information that might matter to you, right? Uh, so and the second part of it, ownership. So who's going to do that? If we're all watching, and as something comes in, we're all sharing emails back and forth to each other. That becomes or we're sending the same email, but maybe from a different source about the same topic. That's what I mean about having a place to save this information as a central, repository so that when something new comes in, you can log it and say, "Hey, I saw something new. I put it into the Google Drive. I put it onto our OneDrive. If you want to check it out there, here are the couple points that I think might be important to us." Using AI to summarize those things. So if it's a new directive or new release that's many pages long, you can use AI to grab a quick one pager summary and distribute that to the organization and say, here's what came in and here's the highlights for it. But I think our common practice is email comes in, forward it to the, put 7 different email addresses in there and the ops email and forward it out and say this is a thing. And then somebody takes that and forwards it to their trip support provider uh, or their other trusted resource and say, what is this? Right? I don't think we spend enough time potentially because we're so busy, because we have so many multiple jobs to do, to read it for ourselves, understand it. It's this we receive something new, we think it affects us, we think it's a problem, the anxiety shoots up, and we're immediately running for help. But that's not really a systematic approach. And now we're stuck in the email chain, and we're depending on somebody else to do our research, uh, and that's a challenge. So build your identify your sources, think about where you could go, not where you know you're going to go, and have somebody kind of take the lead, even if that's a rotating position. Somebody does it this month, somebody else next month, so you're not constantly on the watchtower. But try to standardize this as much as possible. Phase two. So we're on the watchtower and we see something that's important. What are the things that we need to know about it? Or we get an email with 5 different items and something sounds like it's important to us. So what is it first? Which category does it fall into? Is this operational? Is it safety management? Is it sustainability related? Is it traveler related, like a new electronic travel authorization or ETA? Is it access related? Border overflights are going away. There's a new NOTAM that BizAv is blocked or banned from GA airports for a period of time. What is it, and what kind of high level functionality or effect do we think it's going to have for our operation? And then how does it affect me? What's the scope? Is this something that's just U.S.? Is it EU? Is it ICAO and could potentially deal with international routes? Is it just on the NAT track, so only if we're going to be going from the US over to the UK or Europe? Is it what's the time frame? So is it going to be for a set period of time over the next month? Is it a new program that's kind of like EU LISA, where it came out in 2022. We all scrambled to get it done because they said it was going to be 3 months, and then it actually turned into 2.5 to 3 years, and one of those moving targets. But type operational type. So what's that effect that we talked about, so that it can get a proper priority. The scope, where is it going to matter, and what part of our organization or what part of our operation is going to hit? Is it a new regulation for pilots and crew? Is it something that has to do with sustainability, something that deals with taxes, something that deals with access, and then what's the frequency that we're going to have to deal with it? Is this every trip we're going to have to consider, or is it only when we go to a specific location? Is important. Who bears the burden? Is this a traveler program or operator program? Are we dealing like is it an ETA? Like, is it a UK ETA or is it UK GAR? Right? UK GAR is a responsibility of the operator. The UK ETA is the responsibility of the traveler. There's a linkage between the two, but understanding who bears the burden of the regulatory compliance is important up front. Now, is it the operator's responsibility to inform their travelers to help them stay on the front foot? Absolutely. But we want to know, is this a traveler program? Is it an operator program? Is it both, right? Is this a legal entity? Do we need to get down to certificates of registration for the actual or the company registration, not just the aircraft operator, but who is the actual parent company or legal company or legal entity? Is there a legal representative that's going to be required, or a fiscal representative? Often with national programs, you need to have a legal representative who's in country, who's going to help bear some of the burden. Is it a PIC program? At the end of the day, with U.S. Customs, the PIC is ultimately responsible for compliance in so many aspects of CBP programs, or is it something that the operator overall is responsible for? And then, operator or service provider. So, if you've got a service provider who might be handling a wide variety of issues for you, coordinating with them to see if they're going to deal with this on your behalf, or can they deal with it as a third party, is an important conversation to have, right? Is it something that can be done transactionally? If you're setting up ground handling with somebody, can a ground handler take care of the new requirement? Is an important note. What I would say about that, though, is it's important in how you pick your partners. It's important to know where their focus is and areas of expertise are, because with most regulatory requirements, and this is Eric Rodriguez's line from Customs, but I love to steal it. You can outsource 100% of the tasks and usually 0% of the responsibility. So having an agent act on your behalf can help you in your operation. It can streamline things for you. It can give you access to expertise. It can buy you more time to focus on other things. But what it cannot do is take the responsibility from the PIC, the legal responsibility of compliance from the PIC or the legal rep or the operator, depending on the program. So when we engage a partner, it is a partnership. It feels easy oftentimes to say, let me hand this off to somebody, so it's not on my plate. They'll take care of it and let me know when it's done. You got to stay connected. You got to stay involved. And last, how do we validate it? Again, like I said, go to the sources, the CFR, NOTAMs, read the AIP yourself, look at what's posted by Civil Aviation or DGAC, the EU Journal, and you can set up, like I said, automatic screeners to help you get to this information. A lot of this stuff you subscribe to. I would absolutely go out and subscribe to the ECFR, subscribe to, there's a few other regulatory resources for the government, the U.S. government, that as things change, they automatically post there. But find those additional resources to validate on your own and make sure you're getting the appropriate information. So when we talk about our self-assessment, where are we at today? I break it down into four different groups. North America is our kind of, especially so many operators, probably most of the people in this room, U.S. based operators. So the FAA, if you're commercial, DOT, CBP, of course, is a huge stakeholder in all of our lives. And then operations to Canada and Mexico can be very frequent. And so understanding those environments and you frequent them so often that you want things to go like clockwork. That doesn't mean that they're ad hoc. Your arrival into CBP, I know it's the last leg of the trip and we just want to clear customs and we just want it to get on and go. But remember, it is a continuing story for the operator. It's a compliance story. Every time they come in, every time they depart is a compliance story for the operator, and it's a story for the travelers, where they've been, where they're coming back to, how long were they gone, how long did they stay. All of those things are a continuous story and not ad hoc instances. International regulatory, understanding operator security programs that are out there so you get ahead of them. Global APIS, and we'll talk more about that. Traveler programs, you're seeing electronic travel authorizations pop up all over the place. And the security programs, the traveler programs, this is the way of the world, right? Tracking who's moving internationally, arriving into what country, making sure they have the authorization and correct paperwork and correct approvals to stay in that region before they get there is becoming very common. So interactive APIS is something we'll talk about here in a second. Economics and environment emissions program, the sustainability ESG, and then aviation taxes and fees are inane and a nuisance, but something that has to be done because when it isn't managed, like I said, it takes a small issue, something that's a cheap issue, small issue, doesn't affect you on a grand scale, but when it goes sour, when you've got a penalty notice, when you're getting letters that it hasn't been taken care of, or it's coming up in the last minute before your trip, it bubbles up to the top and creates a faux priority that it really shouldn't have if you're working ahead of time. And then the future requirements, how are you managing the horizon, emerging mandates, where is your intelligence, where is your continuous training for your staff, pilots, dispatchers, anybody that's involved in the operation, and in industry advocacy. If there's regulations that are coming out that may affect you, where is your opportunity? Excuse me. Where is your opportunity to be involved, to participate, and make sure that you get the best outcome for industry and for your type of operation. So watching those notices of proposed rulemaking is important, and uh, you can set notices to let you know when something within your specific CFRs, specific keywords, whether it be charter or U.S. Customs or something like that. I know all that stuff bubbles up through NBAA at some point, but it's really important to know when those notices of proposed rulemaking are first coming out because that's our first opportunity as an industry to push back or make our comment heard if if we don't think that it fits correctly or appropriately for BizAv. 1044. All right, global APIS. Many flavors of global APIS. API and PNR, advanced passenger information, person name record, private and charter is actually out there in 50 plus countries. A lot of people have a patchwork program. They use different national portals. They may be unaware of requirements of specific countries. Maybe you haven't been pinged by a country yet, and so you're like, well, they've never said anything yet, so it doesn't matter. It does matter. That's not how risk works. That's not how compliance works. We don't wait until uh, we've felt the pain to address something if we know that there's an opportunity to address it. So there are pre-registration requirements in a lot of these countries. Reduced tolerance. You're seeing more enforcement across the board. You're seeing overlapping mandates. So flying into the EU, you may have EU LISA as a visa validation, and then also have to file APIS into your specific EU country that you're going to. So EU LISA does not file APIS. EU LISA is a separate program for the region, for the Schengen zone. not for individual API in countries. And like I said, we're seeing this interactive APIS mandate. So UK GAR and the UK ETA is a great example that people are probably familiar with. UK ETA is a traveler authorization that's good for 2 years. UK GAR is like APIS, where you're transmitting a virtual representation of the flight. What you get back, though, when you file GAR is a go or no go message on your crew and passengers. And what it is doing is it is going out to the immigration system at Her Majesty's Royal Customs Service and saying, do these travelers have the appropriate documentation to come to the UK? And then giving you an okay. EU LISA is built around the same process, but it actually pulls in the immigration systems from all of the different EU countries, which is why it's taken so long to get there. But the idea is that if a traveler is not okay to stay in a customs zone, that they should get a not okay before they travel, and we keep them at their point of origin versus the old way and legacy way of doing things where somebody arrives into your location and now customs has to deal with them and either deport them on the same airplane, deport them on a commercial flight, give them a waiver when they feel pressure to give them a waiver and allow them to stay. Uh, they are trying to push those borders out and interactive APIS is it in Dubai. It's coming in Hong Kong. Uh, it is going to be the way of the world as we go forward. Singapore, with the no boarding directive, is an ETA program tied to an API style filing. So all these things are really about pushing the borders out for countries and also tracking in a much more deliberate way who's coming in and giving them approval to come before they go. Things like EU LISA, if you want to set up these programs, EU LISA take right now is taking 6 weeks to register as a carrier. And we'll talk more about EU LISA in a second. German PNR, Canada API for commercial operators. All these programs take time to set up and register, and it's not something that you can just do overnight. So if you're operating to those regions, you need to start considering how to do it and get that process started. Implementation of resources, and I know we're here about 10 minutes, so we'll move quick. Deep dive and constraint mapping. So what's, BizAv, if we're looking at how we're going to implement something, we're often an afterthought, like I mentioned. We've been adapted from the airlines. So something for your person to, your resource to consider is how does this affect us? There's always what we read in the news article, what the black and white says in the actual regulation, and then how it's being implemented and affected on the ground. So what are the boots on the ground telling us? So there's always those kind of three pieces of regulation. A technical integration. Is this going to need an IT solution? Am I going to have to build an API connection? Do I have to register for a portal? Which that has become very common in so many things. There's just portals just all over the place, and they all have different idiosyncrasies and different documentation requirements. And some want to know about the operator, and some want to know about the legal entity. And so it's really important to figure out what it's going to take to get the technical side up. What is the technical ask, and do we need training to teach our staff how to use it? Access and flexibility. If I don't have this, is this going to physically affect my trip? If I don't have visa waiver, that means I can't take ESTA travelers. If I don't have border overflights, that means I'm making a stop at the border. If I don't file my GAR, I'm looking at a 10,000 pound fine for operators. So and potentially a delay on arrival, and then overlapping and unclear mandates. So I do my EU ETS, but now I've been told I need to pay a carbon tax in Portugal. Or I went to Portugal and I saw that there was a CO2 tax on my handling invoice. Does that mean carbon tax was paid? No, right? There's levels, especially when it comes to taxes, levels and layers that makes it often unclear exactly what mandates are being taken care of on your behalf and what needs you to proactively get involved and set up. Where are we at with EU LISA? Just phase 3 in action on implementation, because this kind of had all of these aspects. We were an afterthought. Business aviation was an afterthought. There's massive technical integration with this program. The access and flexibility, if you're not screening your passengers, they cannot, as a commercial operator, they cannot come. You can face fines as an operator, and then unclear mandates of EU LISA. How does it compare to APIS? What are the functions of those things, and how does it work? So we are live with the carrier interface and EU LISA. Commercial operators are required to be screening all of their travelers. It is a recommended best practice for private non-revenue operators to register and be able to pre-screen their passengers prior to travel. This has been a big talking point with the airlines and the slowdowns we've been seeing on that side. I think overall the feedback for business aviation is this has been managed pretty well, but we still have another hurdle to get over, and that's the ETIAS program, which is going to be very similar to the visa waiver program or the ESTA program in the U.S. So Europe is just like the UK did. Europe is eliminating visa-free travel. So everybody who is currently visa exempt traveling to Schengen will be getting an ETIAS, an electronic travel authorization, by the end of this year. So EULISA is a story that has changed so many, there's been so many layers and so much change, and it is something that's going to continue to evolve, and it's very important to our travelers. And the mandate is on the operator, right? So it is the operator's requirement to screen these travelers before they come, not just the traveler's requirement to have the appropriate authorization themselves. Other moving targets, global emissions, you've got overlapping schemes, UK ETS, EU ETS. Corsia is now getting started, the ICAO scheme, which was supposed to get rid of these other regionals. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. So you're also going to have UK ETS, EU ETS, and Corsia kind of all operating in the same space. We've been tracking CO2 for years. Now we're tracking non-CO2 as well. There's SAF for commercial operators, Refuel EU, and SAF tracking mandates. All those things become very complicated for operators, and again, away from the core mission of safety. So you want to understand where those mandates apply to you and get the right size solution to fix them. Passenger taxes. Passenger taxes, even though you see a large number of taxes applied on your ground handling invoices, many passenger taxes, 19 different taxes across 13 different member states, are not automatically applied. The reason they're not is because they require legal or fiscal representation. They require a level of data, flight data, that your ground handler may not have. They require portal registration and reporting, even if it's a nil report saying, hey, we didn't do anything this particular month. And so and proactive payment. So they're not going to send you a bill. There are a few countries that will send you a notice once you've been penalized, like French noise taxes or Italian taxes, penalties and interest. But it is your responsibility as an operator to identify these and build representation in those countries and have a process to identify, calculate, pay, and report. We talked about security programs that are continuing to come into play to restrict the amount of travel and pre-vet passengers and operators. Then you have travel bans that can happen very quickly for specific nationalities. U.S. sanctions is a moving target right now, both in the Middle East, Russia, and Venezuela, Cuba as well. I would be very cautious in thinking of operating in any of those places, regardless. Venezuela, I know, just had the earthquakes, but prior to that, there was a lot of buzz about, Venezuela's open for traffic because of the FAA dropping their ban. But that's just one layer. There are so many layers of sanctions and requirements. So don't read the headline of the news story and say, okay, we're good to go. We're gonna make a trip, or what can we do? There's a lot of geopolitical ramifications around all of those scenarios, and so they take a true review and deep dive, and not just the headline. Special events. Business aviation restrictions, specifically business aviation restrictions that we've been seeing more and more of, are also things to keep an eye on. And then last, like I said, phase 4, document and backup. The owner have clear ownership for the four phases. Who's going to do these things? Like I said, it can be on a rotating basis. It doesn't have to be the same person all the time, but you want to make these organizational requirements, not individual requirements, so that you build that resilience in your organization, so that if somebody does leave and move on, wins the lottery, gets their dream job, whatever, that you're not back to square one on a particular program or subject matter, and it helps you sustain your future readiness as mandates continue to pile up and change uh, and grow. This regulations only go one way. There's only going to be more. It's only going to be more complex. It's only going to be slightly more confusing. And so having your system of how you're going to affect it is a key. And I would say that this is proven out in the CBP general aviation life cycle, this kind of same style of approach, this life cycle approach of how we're going to do things on a systematic, recurring basis. CBP has so many level or layers. There's so many different types of operators, 400 plus ports. So we really focused on it as an industry with them over the past 5 years to say, how can we standardize something that you cannot standardize? These ports will not be standardized. That's not the way that the system is set up. It'll never be that way. And I can certainly answer questions and have discussion on why you will not get the same standard. That what you hear from Eric, and I think this is very true, Eric and Drew, is if you want standardized CBP from the government, you're going to get a reduction to the mean. So instead of all these airports that can potentially handle you at midnight or after hours or whatever, you're going to get customs Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and that will be standard. But it's not what we need or what we want in business aviation. But there's feasibility of understanding who you are as an operator, your access, your flexibility, and the programs you need. There's pre-flight. How do you examine a port with the same questions each time? There's your process of how do you do it everywhere you go. You do it the same way, so that you know what your process and SOP is, and then your post-flight. What have you learned from that operation? Because again, like I said, it is a just one page of a story that you're telling in these trips over years and years and years. Each stop, each departure is just one part of the story. The CBP Life Cycle, a fantastic resource. You can Google that and download it from the General Aviation page. This is like a checklist to tell you exactly what you should be doing to maximize your potential success when interacting with CBP from the very beginning of a feasibility check. How do I build my capabilities as an operator and understand the ports that I'm going to? What should happen on the day of? How do I document it? And what are the lessons learned? So I would, if you're not familiar with that document, I would go download it and make it part of your SOP. We got 2 minutes here, so I would just, leave you with a small call to action. If you don't have somebody who's, kind of your regulatory authority, or even if there's somebody who's de facto, try to standardize that a little bit. Try to put an outline together of what that job looks like, and what are the requirements. What does success look like? What are some things that they should be, when it comes to resources, what should they be looking at? How should they communicate that to the organization? Where's the repository? And you can even just start with just one thing and go out and learn about, if it's aviation taxes, if you've identified through this conversation, oh, that could be a gap for us, go out and find out a little bit more about that, document that information, share it with your organization or the people that matter, your stakeholders, and say, okay, here's a map for how we might research topics and share them in the future. Try to get out of that operational firefighting and get into a system of escalation and a system of processing to manage these issues. So here's my contact information. So you can certainly reach out to me if you think I can ever be of help on any of these issues or anything else global regulatory related. I'm always here to help industry. And I want to really, thank Jason. I know that we're going to, if we have any questions here and stuff, but I really want to thank Jason and the group here for the opportunity to share with you today. And hopefully there's some nuggets in here that you can take forward and help your organization. So thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Adam. That was fantastic information. Just one statement, then I think we have time for one question here. I feel kind of sums up a lot of questions, but it's amazing that ICAO, as a result of the Chicago Convention ratification in December 7th, 1944, was meant to standardize the playing field globally, not only for infrastructure, but for access. And it seems like we kind of gone away from that a little bit. And we're increasing complexity across the entire world and everything, the world events, what's going on. And we had an operator ask, they're just starting now. They're starting to operate outside of North America. And they want to know where to start. What do you have any subscriptions that you might want to recommend, or sites or services that can help this operator get going? I mean, gave some great material, Knowledge Center, having an SME, but how can they get started?
Yeah, I think there are some great resources out there about international ops. I know that MBAA has the Business Management Guide, which I think has some really top because their focus is so much on international. I think they have some really great information that's out there. You know, it really takes an assessment. Everything's a little bit different for different operators to know where you're trying to go. If you're just looking, if you're looking at South America versus, or just going to Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean versus trying to get over to the EU, you're going to have different mandates. To your point, ICAO, often draws out ICAO doesn't really enforce anything. ICAO doesn't enforce anything. ICAO draws out the big ideas, and then they hand it over to uh, their regional authorities, like the European Commission, and then ask them to implement those things, or the FAA in the U.S. implement those things. And often, that those organizations have the opportunity to say, no, we don't want to do that. We're going to do this instead. And then each of those organizations, like the European Commission, is responsible for pushing down on their members. So having their individual countries and member states uh, identify, you must implement an EU ETS scheme, and it has to look like this. Here's the big picture, but it's left up to the national authority to say, okay, we're going to do it through a portal, or we're going to, there's big requirements, but how they meet those requirements is often left up to the individual country, which again gives us this tapestry of challenges from even within a similar region. But where would I go? So IBAC, subscribe to something like IBAC, the International Business Aviation Council. Is it Business Aviation Council?
Yeah.
Uh, that works on behalf of ICAO. They're a big advocacy group. Be part of your local and regional associations, and use your network. I'm only as good as my network that I've built over the years. Like I said, any question that comes up, I always, I don't want to trust that just I know the answer. I'm always going to reach out to another person and bounce it off them and say, hey, I think this is what I know. So, stay close to that network, be an NBAA subscriber, and then if you've got something that, international trip support providers are good, just depending on your scope and scale. How many trips are you going to do? If you're a small operator who's only going to do one or two a year, they may not be the best outlet for you. But you know, that's what I've built this business around, is helping operators identify those types of things so that they can go out and execute, whether they want to manage it themselves, turn it over to an ISP. That's part of what we do here as well, is identify all those pain points and help them draw out a map of what needs to happen next.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And your information's up there, so anybody can obviously get a hold of you if they have questions. I want to throw in there too, I think the MBAA International Operators Conference is also probably a good source to pick up on some of these things as well, because they're meeting.
The conferences, IOC, SDC, are fantastic with the updates. But again, a lot of the real value of those going to those conferences is building your network. Not just sitting in an education session and saying, okay, I've learned this and this is what my trip is going to be like forever and ever. But meeting the person who presented, make an introduction and say, hey, can I reach out to you if I ever have questions or if I run across this subject matter again? That's the real value in business aviation is the people of business aviation because there's so much stuff that's changing all the time. What you heard at a conference 2 months ago should always be validated before you try to execute it in real life.
Great advice. Great advice. And thank you so much again, Adam, for being here. It was really, really a pleasure to see you again, to talk to you again, hear all the knowledge that you bring to our operators. It is about being effective and it's about being excellent. And so this very much well relates. I do want to point out that this is a benchmark one for me. This is a year that I started doing these on my own. And at least I think so far we might have done this the first one without a hitch, a technological blurb. So, so
It
Adam,
was
you are
slick,
part of
brother.
something
Come
special.
on.
You know what? I mean, you're part of something special. I do want to shout out to Rick Malzinski for starting this whole vision, the passion that he brought into this, and that our goal is obviously to carry that forward for all our members. So, Adam, again, thank you. Really, really appreciate your contribution. Kalisa, thank you so much for your logistics on all of this. I really appreciate it.
And I see Jeff Euchert in the chat talks about Ops Group. Ops Group is a great resource that they will bring it to your attention and follow those fundamentals of how you track it down from there on what it means to you. But yes, if you're not subscribed to Ops Group as a new international operator, go subscribe to Ops Group and every other newsletter that's out there from service providers and associations to create the biggest funnel uh, possible, right?
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Well, thanks again, Adam. Thank you, Kalisa. And see you guys. So fourth quarter will probably be in, Kalisa, you probably have that. But our leadership webinar is next month. So for Basque members, please join us for that. It'll be Jennifer Pickerel talking on the silent one. So you go ahead and register that for through the portal, and I will see you all then. Thank you so much for what you do, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everybody.